Professor Farrow. I'm going to do things a little differently today in this video. I'm going to talk about when I was competing through the ranks and how I kind of prepare some of my students for competitions or how I got ready for competitions. When I first competed, I believe I was a white belt for about 6 to 7 months. I was in North Carolina. I was still in the Marine Corps. And I mean, it was terrifying. I never competed in any one-on-one sports other than baseball, which that's not a one-on-one sport. But I was a pitcher, so I always had that like attention on me. But I still had teammates behind me. So when you're in there, it's just you got your coaches, but it's just you and your opponent. So at white belt, I remember the first tournament. I weighed in, and the guys I was with were like, "You need to carb up, gain weight back. You compete in a few hours." So like eat some pancakes, stuff like that. So I had some pancakes. I put a little butter on it, and 3 hours later, I still didn't digest the pancakes. I felt sick, and I remember I got creamed in my first tournament, and I lost to like a triangle, and then basically a triangle because I basically gave my second opponent the move just because I felt like I was going to vomit. That was awful. So that was a mishap on my part, and it was a mishap on just who I was with at the time. I didn't have anyone to kind of tell me the exact thing to do at that exact moment, how to get ready right before you compete. So after that tournament, it opened my eyes as, okay, I gotta take this more seriously. I gotta see what's going on. I gotta change my eating habits, all of that, because the training's the important part. So I remember that in North Carolina, I started competing a lot out there on the weekends as a white belt, and I was getting I was winning a lot of them. I was getting a lot of golds, a lot of silvers. As me and this one kid would go back and forth at triangles. He was a very tall, lanky kid. And at that time in jiu-jitsu, like 14 years ago, triangles were, huge. There wasn't barambolos going around at that time. Not when I was at white belt. And I just remember at that tournament, that same first tournament, I remember it was Ryan Hall versus, I forgot the guy's name from Team Alliance from Georgia. And they were in a super fight, and I believe they were high purple belts at the time, and just watching them at their level was incredible. To see that as you're a white belt and you see these two names that I was watching for the 6 months I was into jiu-jitsu. So I felt that was awesome to see what level, because I remember saying, wow, I quit. I don't want to do this anymore, as a joke, because just seeing how amazing they were at that level. But now, when you stay with it, you could get to that amazing level, and that's what's awesome about it. So, tournaments went on, white belt. Again, just first, second, third, I was doing good. A lot of golds, a lot of silvers, and then after about 13 months, I think I got my blue belt in North Carolina, and that was before I moved back home. So when I competed at blue belt, was not a lot changed to me from white to blue belt, other than things were a little more technical, not by much. However, in today's jiu-jitsu community, I think blue belts are amazing, because you have these kids that are 16 years old that become blue belts, but they've been training like 8-9 years already, kind of like my professor, and by the time they're 20 years old, they're amazing. And there's guys like that all over the world right now. And now Americans, 20-year-old, 21-year-old kids are black belt no-gi world champions, gi champions. And then you add that on top of, you have some good wins at some super fights, but, you add that to world championships, you can't beat that. So blue belt, I noticed I just needed a little bit more cardio, so I just added a little more circuit training, a little more weight training, meant specifically for jiu-jitsu. So that's what I noticed a lot. Now, during this time, I was getting into MMA a lot at blue belt. And that's when it became tough to balance both, because if I'm not doing the gi, it was tough for me to get promoted if I'm only doing gi once a week, because I was focused a lot on no gi in my MMA training, and then you have to do the stand up training, then you have to wrestle. You got to do all of that stuff. So it's hard for me to balance that. But during blue belt, I was still able to get away with just my scrappiness, and I was technical, but not to me, not very, very, very technical. What I could kind of see now, in my eyes, just looking at me as a blue purple belt, I'm like, wow, I didn't know anything. But I felt like that was a good belt to move up, and after blue belt, I hit purple, obviously, and that was when it got really tough for me, and that's when my MMA amateur career kind of took off a little bit. Like, I wanted to fight every 2-3 months. I was really working on my stand up a lot, but I really, really wanted to keep going in jiu-jitsu. So I remember at my purple belt was my first IBJJF competition, and I was a light feather. I wasn't as muscular as I am now, so it was easier for me to get down to that weight. But I remember I got creamed at my first IBJJF tournament by a little kid, a little dude, just like, what the hell just happened? Because I was not doing a ton of gi, and that belt was very, very difficult. I was doing good in no gi. It's just, it wasn't transferring over to the gi. Like, I wasn't thinking of the lapel as much. I was just using a lot of MMA, jiu-jitsu, in the gi. So that could only get you so far. So then I started studying open guard, especially De La Riva guard, at purple belt. And that was the first time I used it in a competition. And I got past using it, and I ended up losing. Even, that was, again, purple belt, the same, IBJJF. I wasn't able to compete a lot because I was working a full-time job, and I had to take vacation days. So I used them for fights, my MMA fights, because I had to cut weight and all that stuff. And then you take the day, 2 days after the fight, you got to take vacation. So same thing with tournaments, though, but it was only one day. So I would take like a vacation day so I could compete on a Saturday. So that to me was difficult with purple belt. Brown belt was just another step up. I was still doing MMA at brown belt, and I started competing a little bit at brown belt in jiu-jitsu. Not a ton, but I remember doing IBJJF, and I was stuck doing an absolute division, and it was tough. I did okay, but then I got submitted pretty hard by some two big dudes. And again, it's just I didn't feel like I knew enough jiu-jitsu with the gi on, where I wanted to be. At brown belt, I was doing barimbolos, but I would never do them in a competition. Honestly, the first berimbolo I hit and tried was at black belt, and now I will do it at any competition. It's kind of those things where I tell my students that you have to, if you're doing stuff in here and it's working, don't be afraid and play it safe out in a tournament. Like, do what you do in here, have fun with it. So once I kind of put that mindset at black belt, that's when I started winning tournaments. That's when I started winning matches, and I'm beat some high level guys when I lost to people that weren't near as high level, 5 years before. It's crazy to see, but that's what is great about jiu-jitsu. So I was about a brown belt for like 4 years. It was taking a while, and I was just annoyed. I was like, man, I've been a one-stripe brown belt for like years. And I had, I think the past 2 fights, MMA fights, got canceled because a guy pulled out a week before again. And after 8 weeks of a camp getting my ass kicked in Muay Thai and MMA training with Christian Uflacker, Gideon Ray, I trained with a lot of really good fighters back in the day, and where I'd get creamed in training. But then when I would fight, it'd be different. So, that After that, I was getting a sour taste in my mouth about MMA. I made some money off of it. It's not even about that. So I was like, what do I love? And I started falling back into love with jiu-jitsu. I'm like, I want to go back to what I love. I want my black belt. Like I'm on a mission. Why am I wasting it away by doing these fights where I'm just stuck at brown belt, where I could be, let's get a black belt, maybe even open my school or something like that, or start instructing. Those are goals that you think you're never going to see, but those were goals that I had in mind. So after a few competitions at brown belt, I'm like, all right. And then those MMA fights, I stopped competing, and I started to train a lot in the gi. Just, I don't know how many days a week I was training in the gi. I just focused a lot on it. And then my professor was seeing that I was training a lot in the gi every day when he saw me there, and I started picking up more stuff and started having fun and doing more barambolos and started understanding stuff a little bit more. Then that's when I received my black belt, and that's when I knew that I wanted to start teaching more, but I still wanted to compete. And a month later, that's when I went against JL Miao. A month after I just got my black belt, which was cool because I've been watching him since purple belt, kind of like my idol, even though he's younger than me. So it was awesome to compete against him 3 times, but it was awesome to compete with him a month in. But looking at that, in the beginning of my black belt career competing, like I didn't know anything compared to what I know now. And so that was kind of like what I had to go through competing, like a lot of MMA and a lot of doing jiu-jitsu. But now when I have my students train that are just doing jiu-jitsu, I tell them how important it is to study. And I can't do it for them, but I believe it's very important to go on YouTube, not necessarily study techniques, go watch matches and slow it down, look where their grips are, learn the movements more, learn what guard is called, learn as many escapes as you can and use a few of them, but you got to know what to do in every position. But now I could kind of watch a move and I'll practice a few times and that'll be it. As when I was a purple belt, brown belt, there's a lot of things I couldn't even figure out. I was like, I quit. I don't get it. But now, I could figure it out. And that's just years of doing it and just studying. With that being said, it's just that the levels have changed and everything has gone up since I started. And it's very important for me to have my white belts that compete. I want them to feel like they could beat purple belts, or just having confidence to go in there and know they're going to go in there and not make any terrible mistakes, which are going to happen. But that's what I try to put in their mindsets of when we're training and when I talk to them about competing, and to have fun with it, to have fun and experience. When people I don't want to be outweighed or I weigh more than this person. At the part of being a white belt, blue belt, when I started competing too, we didn't care about weight, so I was always underweight. At that level, you just want that experience, and I want experience for my students. Biggest thing out there, get yourself on the mats with other people competing. Train hard with your training partners, and then if you're competing, just get ready, but you have to put the training in for it. I'm not with you 7 days a week, and I make my students know, do stuff. You have to do stuff out of here. You got to do your weights. Come talk to me about anything like that. And the more I've competed throughout all of these years of what has maintained kind of how I look at how I treat my students, because I don't want them to go through the stuff that I've gone through, like torn ankles. I got getting an arm popped in a jiu-jitsu match a week before an MMA fight, like stupid stuff like that I could have prevented. So with me making those mistakes, I get to pass it down to my students. So kind of just wanted to talk about that today, just to kind of get into it. I've had a few people ask me for certain things like this on my YouTube now. So I'll get into more and more talking points, But this was just an intro to the competition scene, who I kind of trained with, which I could get into that in a whole YouTube video, a whole podcast or something on that, of who I trained with. But as far as competing, I'm I want you guys to understand jujitsu. Just don't do a movement. Understand why you're doing it. So hopefully you get something from this video. And if you have any, you could comment underneath. If you want any more talking points and other subjects, and I will get to that as soon as we can. Thank you. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, comment, and subscribe on my YouTube, and we'll be back next week for some more videos.